Hi guys, I had an issue with the video that I made for chapter 4 for Charlotte's Web, so I'm just making it again. So we're going to get two chapters today, chapter 4 for me and chapter 5, I believe, from Ms. Delgado, so I will post both of those together. Today is March 27, 2020, and we're going to continue reading from Charlotte's Web. This is the first time I've read it to a class. I do remember being in third grade and our teacher, maybe third or second grade, it might have been third grade, our third grade teacher reading it to us, and I remember loving this book. And I'm really getting into it so far. So what I'm gonna ask you to do is to take out your reader's notebook out, because I'm gonna have you copy a chart down. So I know in the previous videos, we've been working on figuring out the meaning of unknown words. We always do these skills. We always summarize. We always infer about characters. Like we're thinking about, what are they like as people or as characters? We're always looking for evidence and then really extending our thinking and wondering out loud, like what motivates these characters. So I'm going to ask you to pause the video just so that you can copy this down. And then I don't have it up at the top, but I would really like for you guys to write down chapter 4, okay? I don't have space on mine, but just write chapter 4 up at the top. And then our triple T chart, inference about character traits, textual evidence, and then this makes me think ... about motivation. So do that now. And then that means you're back, and I'm going to be reading. So I'm going to read from chapter 4, and as I'm reading, I am going to stop once in a while to go over some of the vocabulary word that we're hearing in the story. Okay? And here we go, chapter 4. The next day was rainy and dark. Rain fell on the roof of the barn and dripped steadily from the eaves. So here's an example of eaves. House typically has a roof like that, and this would be the eaves. So the water is dripping down from the eaves. Rain fell in the barnyard and ran in crooked courses down into the lane where thistles and pigweed grew. Rain spattered against Mrs. Zuckerman's kitchen windows and came gushing out of the downspouts. Rain fell on the backs of the sheep as they grazed in the meadow. I say you say grazed. When a cow grazes, they're just eating the grass. Rain fell on the backs of the sheep as they grazed in the meadow, and the sheep, tired of standing in the rain, they walked slowly up the lane and into the fold. Rain upset Wilbur's plans. Wilbur had planned to go out this day and dig a new hole in his yard. He had other plans too. His plans for the day went something like this. Breakfast at 6:30, skim milk, crust, middlings, bits of donuts, wheat cakes with drops of maple syrup sticking to them, potato skins, leftover custard pudding with raisins and bits of shredded wheat. Breakfast would be finished at 7. From 7 to 8, Wilbur planned to have a talk with Templeton, the rat that lived under his trove. Talking with Templeton was not the most interesting occupation in the world, but it was better than nothing. From 8 to 9, Wilbur planned to take a nap outdoors in the sun. From 9 to 11, he planned to dig a hole or trench and possibly find something good to eat buried in the dirt. From 11 to 12, he planned to stand still and watch flies on the boards, watch bees in the clover, and watch swallows in the air. Swallows are types of birds. 12 o'clock, lunchtime, middlings, warm water, apple parings, meat gravy, carrot scrapings, meat scraps, stale hominy, and the wrapper off a package of cheese. Lunch would be over at 1. From 1 to 2, Wilbur planned to sleep. From 2 to 3, he planned to scratch itchy places by rubbing against the fence. From 3 to 4, he planned to stand perfectly still and think of what it was like to be alive and to wait for Fern. At 4 would come supper. I say, you say supper. Supper is another word that people have used to describe dinner. So at 4 would come supper or dinner, skim milk, provender, leftover sandwich from Lurvy's lunchbox, prune skins, a morsel, a tiny bite of this, a bit of that, fried potatoes, marmalade drippings, a little more of this, a little more of that, a piece of baked apple, a scrap of upside down cake. Wilbur had gone to sleep thinking about these plans. He awoke at 6 and saw the rain, and it seemed as though he couldn't bear it. He couldn't stand it. I get everything all beautifully planned out, and it has to go and rain, he said. For a while, he stood gloomily indoors. Then he walked to the door and looked out. Drops of rain struck his face. His yard was cold and wet. His trough had an inch of rainwater in it. Templeton was nowhere to be seen. "Are you out there, Templeton?" called Wilbur. There was no answer. Suddenly, Wilbur felt lonely and friendless. "One day, just like another," he groaned. "I'm very young. I have no real friend here in the barn. It's going to rain all morning and all afternoon, and Fern won't come in such bad weather. Oh, honestly." And Wilbur was crying again for the second time in 2 days. At 6:30, Wilbur heard the banging of a pail. Lurvy was standing outside in the rain, stirring up breakfast. "Come on, pig," said Lurvy. Wilbur did not budge. Lurvy dumped the slop, scraped the pail, and walked away. He noticed that something was wrong with the pig. Wilbur didn't want food. He wanted love. He wanted a friend, someone who would play with him. He mentioned this to the goose, who was sitting quietly in the corner of the sheepfold. "Will you come over and play with me?" he asked. "Sorry, Sonny, sorry," said the goose. "I'm sitting on my eggs, 8 of them. Got to keep them toasty warm. I have to stay right here. I'm no flibberty-ibberty-gibbet. I do not play when there are eggs to hatch. I am expecting goslings." Goslings are baby geese. "Well, I didn't think you were expecting woodpeckers," said Wilbur bitterly. Wilbur next tried one of the lambs. "Will you please play with me?" he asked. "Certainly not," said the lamb. "In the first place, I cannot get into your pen, and I am not old enough to jump over the fence. In the second place, I am not interested in pigs. Pigs mean less than nothing to me." "What do you mean, less than nothing?" replied Wilbur. "I don't think there is any such thing as less than nothing. Nothing is absolutely the limit of nothingness. It's the lowest you can go. It's the end of the line. How can something be less than nothing? If there were something that was less than nothing, then nothing would not be nothing. It would be something, even though it's just a very little bit of something. But if nothing is nothing, then nothing has nothing that is less than it is." "Oh, be quiet," said the lamb. "Go play by yourself. I don't play with pigs." I'm going to pause right here because there's a lot of information that we're gathering about Wilbur and how he's feeling. And so I'm going to go back to my chart. And I want to make an inference about Wilbur right now. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to go in here. And you can write with me. Remember, if I'm writing, you can write. And let's make this maybe, let's see if 6 seems a good size. So Wilbur is feeling, I don't know, guys, what do you think? What is he feeling at the moment? Make an inference about his feelings right now. I just noticed I misspelled Wilbur. That's not how you spell it. So Wilbur is feeling, pause it so that you can write what you think he's feeling. All right, so we're back. So you might have said something like, Wilbur is feeling lonely and melancholy. Why? Why is he feeling lonely and melancholy? What's my evidence? Well, if I go back in the text, and this is my book, so I've definitely written on here. This is what you do when in college, in high school, when you get your own books. You typically want to annotate, right? You want to write on the margins and on the sides and highlight and underline things that are important. And I underlined this because I think this is my evidence. So Wilbur's feeling lonely and melancholy because in the text it says, I get everything all beautifully planned out and it has to go rain. For a while he stood gloomily indoors. So he's feeling lonely and melancholy. I know Wilbur is feeling an intense sense of loneliness. Ooh, that rhymes. An intense sense of loneliness because in the text on page 27, it says, I get everything all beautifully planned out, and it has to go rain. It has to go rain, he said. For a while, he stood gloomily. When somebody's gloomy, it means that they're sad. He stood gloomily indoors. So now I'm going to reread that. Okay, so Wilbur's feeling lonely and melancholy. Wilbur's feeling an intense sense of loneliness because in the text on page 27, it says, I get everything all beautifully planned out and it has to go rain, he said. For a while, he stood gloomily indoors. And so now this is making me think, like, what is he motivated by? What does he really want? Pause so that you can write, I think, or which makes me think, Wilbur is motivated by, All right, so you paused me and you wrote your own statement about what he's motivated by. You might have said that maybe he's motivated by his desire to have a friend. He misses, right? He misses, I forgot her name right now. The girl. Oh, he misses Fern. So he misses Fern a lot and he feels like he doesn't have any friends in this barn. All right, so I'm gonna go back to the reading. You can write that down as you're listening to me continue the reading. Sadly, Wilbur lay down and listened to the rain. Soon he saw the rat climbing down a slanting board that he used as a stairway. Will you play with me, Templeton? Asked Wilbur. Play? Said Templeton, twirling his whiskers. Play? I hardly know the meaning of the word. Well, said Wilbur, it means to have fun, to frolic, to run and skip, and to make merry. I never do those things if I can avoid them, replied the rat sourly. So he's like, right? If he's replying sourly, he's like not happy about it. He's not like excited. So this is maybe an example of sourly. I never do those things if I can avoid them, replied the rat sourly. I prefer to spend my time eating, gnawing, spying, and hiding. I am a glutton. So a glutton means somebody who likes to eat a lot. I am a glutton, but not a merrymaker. Right now, I'm on my way to your trough to eat your breakfast, since you haven't gotten sense enough to eat it yourself. And Templeton the rat crept stealthily along the wall and disappeared into a private tunnel that he had dug between the door and the trough in Wilbur's yard. Templeton was a crafty rat, and he had things pretty much his own way. The tunnel was an example of his skill and cunning. Cunning means that he's very, very smart, and here is the word. Cunning means also clever, right? Let me actually stay on this page so you guys can see the words and make it big. The tunnel was an example of his skill and cunning. The tunnel enabled him to get from the barn to his hiding place under the pig trough without coming out into the open. He had tunnels and runways all over Mr. Zuckerman's farm and could get from one place to another without being seen. Usually he slept during the daytime and was abroad only after dark. Wilbur watched him disappear into his tunnel. In a moment, he saw the rat's sharp nose poke out from underneath the wooden trough. Cautiously, Templeton pulled himself up over the edge of the trough. This was almost more than Wilbur could stand on this dreary, rainy day to see his breakfast being eaten by somebody else. He knew Templeton was getting soaked out there in the pouring rain, but even that didn't comfort him. Friendless, dejected, right? Dejected means like he feels super sad and depressed and hungry. He threw himself down in the manure and sobbed. Late that afternoon, Lurvy went to Mr. Zuckerman. I think there's something wrong with that pig of yours. He hasn't touched his food. Give him 2 spoonfuls of sulfur and a little molasses, said Mr. Zuckerman. Wilbur couldn't believe what was happening to him when Lurvy caught him and forced the medicine down his throat. This was certainly the worst day of his life. He didn't know whether he could endure the awful loneliness anymore. Darkness settled over everything. Soon there were only shadows and the noises of the sheep chewing their cuds. and occasionally the rattle of a cow chain up overhead. You can imagine Wilbur's surprise when out of the darkness came a small voice he had never heard before. It sounded rather thin, but pleasant. "Do you want a friend, Wilbur?" it said. "I'll be a friend to you. I've watched you all day and I like you." "But I can't see you," said Wilbur, jumping to his feet. "Where are you, and who are you?" "I'm right up here," said the voice. "Go to sleep. You'll see me in the morning." So the last thing I want you to do is to make a prediction. So we actually did the first part where you inferred about what he's feeling, and now I want you to make a prediction. I predict that in the next chapter, Wilbur will, right? Suddenly there's a voice coming, or he hears a voice in his barn and he doesn't know where the voice is coming from, right? Who knows? I want you to make a prediction, and make sure you look out for Mrs. Delgado's chapter 5 today. Remember, I was unable to, something happened with the video yesterday, so you're getting 2 chapters today from Charlotte's Web. I hope you guys are enjoying the book, and if you are, and if you can, please write a comment below our YouTube videos to tell us what your favorite part is so far. Do you feel bad for Wilbur? What do you think? All right, see you guys in the next video.